Can you guys hear me okay? Great, great. So yeah, first off, I've been to a bunch of conferences this year, ranging from ETH Denver to Token 2049 in Dubai, as well as Brussels for ETHCC. And I have to say, like, the Futurist conference, what Tracy and team's done here, it's amazing. So could I get a round of applause for them and all of their hard work? Amazing, amazing, thank you. So Hyperscaling AI, I'll kind of kick it off with some introductions here. I'm Ron Chan, one of the co-founders of Inference Labs. We're the verification layer for AI. So essentially what that is that our technology allows for the efficiency of off-chain AI compute without introducing additional trust assumptions. And we do that with cryptography, or more specifically, zero-knowledge cryptography.
Okay, thanks, Ron. I'm Ashley Nandan from Google Cloud. I work in our new client acquisition space. So over the last year, and especially over the last 2 years, Google Cloud has poured significant investments in AI and in the Web3. And so my job is to go out there and find amazing founders that want to start, create, and build on our platform.
Yeah, hey guys. My name is Nick Emmons. I'm the co-founder of Allora, and we're building a decentralized, self-improving AI network, essentially enabling different ML models to learn off of one another in producing this more performant or intelligent source of collective AI or collective intelligence.
Hello everyone, I'm Ronghui. I'm the co-founder of CertiK. You may have heard of it. So it's a Web3 cybersecurity firm. So we provide auditing services. We provide actually one-stop, full-stack cybersecurity products and services. So if you need any help with, let's say, security auditing, with, let's say, instance response, some help with some stolen fund and so on, you can reach out to us.
Great, thanks so much. So I get asked a lot, the difference between decentralized AI as well as centralized AI. The question is, okay, when is decentralized AI going to reach parity or beat, say, OpenAI's ChatGPT 4.0, situations like that. And I kind of always look at these partisan issues as something that humans introduce. Technology doesn't really care about that. Technology, however, has challenges in the sense that there is no one single solution that works for everything. Essentially, you really just have a bunch of trade-offs, and you're trying to kind of fit these pieces together. So, essentially, that's what we kind of see. I think centralized AI is going to be much more performant in certain areas. However, decentralizing technology is really beautiful. It has amazing attributes. The internet's decentralized, right? And for me, what's close to me in terms of what crypto brings or decentralization brings to AI is essentially sovereignty, ensuring that there's diversity of AI models. And lastly, essentially censorship resistance on these AI models, which I think are important points. And when I see the future, at least what I'm predicting, is not like a handful of these large LLMs, like these major players that are going to win it all and steamroll everyone. I really see just like billions, if not trillions, of different AI models out there interoperating. And that's why I think crypto works very well. So I'd love to ask the panel here, why do you see AI and crypto fitting? Like where do you see like tokens being useful for AI or incentive structures?
Did you want to start, Nick?
Sure, yeah, I guess I'll start. So I think for one, at a high level, when we think about AI, obviously we think about this like significantly more expressive and advanced form of compute, and as that compute becomes more advanced, it kind of like intuitively requires some decentralized economic substrate by which to coordinate. I don't think AI is going to put up with the inefficiencies of kind of like centralized, bureaucratic-driven coordination mechanisms. And then I think more fundamentally, what blockchains or crypto are useful in creating is essentially environments where different potentially nebulous resources can be turned into more tangible commodities or digital assets. And so when we think about the sort of functions of AI, we see these kind of monolithic structures being driven by centralized organizations today. They're accumulating compute, data, they're sort of making sense of those in intelligent ways and producing this end model, distributing it to users, et cetera. But with blockchains, we can take each of these core functions and essentially codify competitive market environments around them to create more efficient environments for those resources to be provisioned, creating decentralized markets for compute to unlock excess compute that would otherwise be locked in unproductive states. Same with data, same with the composition of many different models. And so I think blockchains will be this useful means of creating more efficient competitive markets for AI, which will in turn lead to a much faster rate of progression and performance for AI as well.
I completely agree with that. I mean, that's how I see it. It's like, do we need like, a $20 subscription of compute credits locked into one platform, and then it's just sitting there when you interact with another one, and then you have to spin up another, $20 of compute for something else. So I see that as well.
Sure. I guess on the Google Cloud front, that's exactly where our product set is, or how it's being designed today. It's to be a platform to progress AI. And so on our platform, we have access to over 150 foundational models where you can start to build on, fine-tune on. The data doesn't need to actually sit in Google Cloud. It can sit anywhere, and you can have connectors to start building. And then separately, we also have a platform for data analysis, and to ensure that you are analyzing data, you have a problem that you're looking to solve with your business before you actually even get to using AI to execute anything. And so we have a bunch of public blockchain data sets on our platform, and so it's purely just data. There is no market value, and I think there's this analogy out there that data is oil, is the new oil, and so data has like oil determines market conditions. And so when you start to use the data and do analysis and find that there are gaps, or do correlation analysis and find that there are gaps and there is a problem to solve, then you can move into actually using AI to solve that problem as part of your business. So those are the two components of our platform, the data analysis platform, as well as actually executing training and inference on our platform, no matter where that data sits, and to produce an outcome.
Sure, I could see that. As we're training, say, LLMs to code, I could even see someone going in GCP and spinning up, 10 instances of a software developer that's an AI, right? So yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so I can add one angle about data privacy. So let's say most of the centralized AI model, you can view them as black boxes. And actually it introduced some concerns in the sense that, well, how this model gonna use data, how they gonna how the data gonna be used for training, and how to preserve the data privacy, and so on. So you, on one side you want to keep data privacy. On the other side, you still want to use this data, right, to do something. So actually it generates lots of problems, and these problems can be addressed by the integration of blockchain and AI technology. So for example, in like CertiK, right? So we are doing lots of code auditing and so on. So actually we heavily use AI models. Help us, let's say, to analyze the code, generate findings, all this kind of stuff. But well, not only us, but also our clients have concern that we should not, let's say, upload or feed the user's code to these AI models, right? So like ChatGPT 4.0 and so on. So what we do now is well, we train our own model, we do fine tuning, all this kind of stuff, but it's pretty costly. And CertiK, well, as a unicorn, we can afford it, but not for many other startups. I would say the integration of blockchain and AI may kind of like address this problem. Not only can preserve data privacy, but also can kind of like show how data are used without leaking, right, privacies and so on. So I would say that this is also something I want to add to the panel.
Thank you so much. I mean, you're kind of validating the whole like existence for inference, right? You know, essentially, I see we have like proprietary models as well as you know, open source models. But before I kind of like jump to that, because you picked up on it before my next question. But you know, from our experiences, we did launch a subnet 2 on BitTensor in April. And going back to the crypto economic incentive model, we found it worked really well. By launching that, what we did was we ended up spinning up probably like the world's largest distributed and decentralized zkML proving cluster. Because what we're doing in the cryptography is actually quite computationally expensive. And when we initially launched to circuitize some of those AI models, we found that the proving times would be about 20 seconds. And without any of our intervention, just like the whole like entire BitTensor community, or at least the miners that are operating infrastructure there, we're able to optimize the entire MLOps stack. Reach out to our dependencies, figure out how to like optimize that. They have like the proving times down below 4 seconds now, where even like the creators of some of these packages are reaching out to like our subnet going, hey, what are you guys doing? Like they have their own like compute cluster and they charge like a service for it. And they're like, how are you guys like getting these like quick proving times? So we're seeing it in action. It definitely is working on our end. So going back to kind of one of your points is, you know, the proprietary models versus open source models. I think one of the biggest barriers to decentralized AI adoption is that you don't have this ability to have some sort of confidentiality to these AI models. I'm not saying we go back to building walled gardens again, but there are definitely founders, startups, enterprise customers that essentially won't enter this decentralized AI space unless they can actually protect their IP. Because we're spending a lot of money, thousands of hours, millions of dollars to kind of train these models to provide some sort of value. You need some sort of privacy or confidentiality to protect that. And on the other side of things, we're very supportive of open source. In fact, all of our code, everything we're doing is all open source. But there's situations and use cases where open source doesn't work. For instance, like security. If you had an open source security model, that's a non-starter, right? Like the weights and biases are available, so any adversary, malicious actors, they're instantly going to be able to figure out how to counter that. So open source isn't necessarily always like the right answer. And I'm also kind of observing that the word open source is getting polluted. Just from a software perspective, you have free and open source. Now it's like commercial open source. And when you introduce AI, there's a whole new sector, right? Like, Meta's releasing open source models, but it's open source for you to use and run on your own infrastructure, but it's actually not open weight. So the data set, how it's collected, how it's trained is proprietary. So my question is, with your respective industries, where do you see confidentiality or privacy being important?
I guess I can start with that one. So proprietary models in two cases. Number one, when you are using it with business data, because your data is your own IP, and two, in foundational models, because if you're going to put a ton of compute power into building a foundational model, you want to keep that proprietary. So those are the two use cases that I see.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's kind of always useful, right? Like, if we're talking about blockchains or crypto as these means of creating like more expressive market environments markets are already the distillation of many people's proprietary or asymmetric information in sort of a shared public format. And so I think we can maintain a world where most of the models are closed source, most of the data is private or proprietary, because the ultimate benefit is revealed via the market interactions that we're enabling via these decentralized coordination mechanisms anyway. So I think it's useful across the board, basically everywhere.
Yeah, so as Ron mentioned, like, so because we are a cybersecurity company, we always want to think about these things, well, with some cybersecurity sauce in it, like for open source AI, let's say. So it's kind of like definitely very useful, but in terms of security, cybersecurity, actually it's a little bit more risky in the sense that while the hackers and so on, they can get a better sense, have a much better knowledge about the model, and may be able to perform some attack. So that is why in some, let's say, industry, some category like healthcare, like autonomous driving and so on. So it may be kind of like it's hard for them to let's say apply open source AI and so on for this kind of like cyber security concerns and so on. Yeah.
Great, and Nick, I agree. We're experiencing that. I hate to kind of go back to the BitTensor experience, but you know, it's in production. You know, like people are actually using it, and one of the biggest, I guess, criticisms of that network is, you know, initially when it started off, it was a bit of an Ouroboros. People were there just basically, you know, collecting rewards, but tapping into other networks and external ecosystems, I think, is absolutely critical to kind of support the growth of that network. So my next question really is constraints. Essentially in AI, you know, Sam Altman has come out and said compute is going to be the next form of currency. I'm not sure I entirely agree with that, but at the same time, I am seeing that this hardware or these AI chips or compute is constrained. We have one major manufacturer being an NVIDIA releasing these GPUs, and even Stanford, their NLP lab, they basically said they're falling behind. They only have 64 H100s. And comparatively, if you kind of look at billion-dollar data centers and like say Elon Musk with his Dojo supercomputer, they're talking about 300,000 H100s. So I think compute is one of them. I've seen active like use cases with apps that are generating AI artwork or images and novel approaches to taking decentralization to kind of offload some of the compute. So, you know, I see compute being a little bit of a constraint. I'd love to kind of hear from the panel, what other constraints do you guys see out there?
Should I start again?
Hmm?
Start again, okay. Obviously, there's a few big players that have buying power for compute, and Google does actually manufacture their own custom chips as well as third-party chips like NVIDIA chips. So we are a source of compute, but what I've seen as a constraint is adoption of AI, and the technology is out there, but how fast can users actually adopt, experiment, and iterate on a business or a service, and be able to take those learnings and re-implement that into the business model. So it's been slow, and I think yesterday Ron and I were talking about like Uber, the adoption of Uber, and how long that took people to adopt, even though like people are transporting themselves from point A to point B like constantly, and Uber was in a ton of debt for a long time. So adoption is definitely number one for me.
Yeah, I think as you were kind of alluding to, that there's constraints across the entire supply chain with AI. There's constraints with data provisioning, there's constraints with data structuring or labeling. Obviously, there are these really pronounced compute constraints. And I think one interesting dimension that hasn't been entirely explored yet is AI today is like essentially 2 raw resources put together en masse in data and compute. And I agree with your point earlier that the future is going to be one of many models, not just these few dominant models. And so I think a new dimension that opens up to help alleviate some of those constraints with data and compute is we can now have many specialized models that maybe require less data or compute individually, contributing to this more accelerated rate of progression or improvement in AI more broadly. So I agree there's constraints around the existing supply chain of raw resources, but there are new dimensions of resources that have still been underexplored largely.
Yeah, I want to talk about another constraints about, I would say, the current AI model, especially LLM model, that is a lack of capability of reasoning. So it's kind of like you can use ChatGPT 4.0 to generate a pretty long, let's say, essay and so on. And it seems like makes sense, but actually it may lack of some underlying logic. So this, I heard someone say that, well, ChatGPT is kind of like a teenager. He can keep talking, but it may not know exactly what he's talking about. And it's not a big deal when, it's not a big problem when you use this model to generate, let's say, essay or an email and so on. But nowadays, people are using this model to generate code. And it actually is there are lots of hidden risks there. In the sense that, well, since the lack of the capability of reasoning, it may generate an embed bugs into the code. And it's also much harder, let's say, for the developer or for the code reviewer to find this because, well, it's not written by themselves. And according to an NSF report, that's right now actually a pretty significant amount of code has already been generated, right, using AI tools, and the hidden bias has been increased, I would say, a lot. And I would say that this is something may not draw enough attention.
Right, yeah. One thing that I don't see constrained is developer interest. I've been through a few tech cycles, like forget crypto. I haven't seen this level of interest, even with Apple App Store or Google Play, and it's incredible. I think there's some incredible stuff that's coming out. I think we're at that stage of kind of like that iBeer app where people are just kind of messing around, and we're very early. So speaking of constraints, time, that we're all up against that one. So we'll kind of wrap things up. But what excites you in your industry, or what keeps you up at night? And here's your chance to kind of shill what you're doing.
Okay, so I get the pleasure and opportunity to work with a lot of startups across, well, based out of Toronto and across Canada, and use AI to develop their business. And so I get to see what AI is doing in multiple industries. But in Web3 and AI today, Google Cloud offers up to $350K in credits to get started on our platform, so that if you're venture backed, so look into that, and you can reach out to me or my team, and I can get you in touch with the right people as you start to build and create your own company and use our services.
Yeah, I think what's exciting for me is we're in such a critical point in time in I think history where we can go down one of two paths. One where AI is perpetuated as a private good and it's owned by a few large monoliths, or where AI turns the way of the internet and is seen and proliferated more as a public utility that is contributed to by many decentralized parties. And so continuing to contribute to that in the way we are, in the way the broader space is our focus, will remain to be our focus, and hopefully will lead to a much better state of society down the road by reimagining a kind of competitive instance of AI in a decentralized form factor rather than a private centralized one.
Yeah, I want to share kind of like a small story. Like we finished our $2 billion valuation round in late 2022, and several months later, there's ChatGPT 3.5, and there's an article, pretty famous article online that is throw the smart contract code to this ChatGPT model, and they can generate, let's say, find some bugs in it. And one of our investors, actually many of our investors, like Binance, Sequoia, SoftBank, they send me kind of like message like, well, will this model kill your business? right? You just finished your fundraising, and we tried. So fortunately, I would say we still can't simply replace our auditing products and so on with these models. Like yesterday, when I tried ChatGPT 4.0, I threw a 4 lines swap storage code to it. It generated 6 findings, but none of them make sense actually. So it's still not powerful enough. But I would say it's dramatically changed how we are doing auditing business, how we are providing cybersecurity services to our clients nowadays. Like we utilize it to help us, let's say, generate the code explanation, help us understand the code, help us generate test cases, fuzzing test cases, help us, let's say, even help us write auditing reports and so on. So it's definitely enhanced the productivity, but and we are also looking forward to see how better it can become later.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you so much. It was a banger of a lineup for the panelists, and everybody give a round of applause to team here.